What's up, everybody? Back once again. It's on with Joe Illidge and Shadow Cabinet Stories. What do we decide the name of the show is going to be, Joe?
I think we decided on the Shadow Faction.
The Shadow Faction. This is episode 2 of the Shadow Faction with Joe Illidge.
We are back. Thank you for having me.
It's your show, man. I'm happy you're having me.
You're killing me.
We're just a channel, man. It's your show.
Oh my goodness.
So tell us where we're at. What happened in our last episode, our last issue of Shadow Cabinet?
Oh my goodness. Well, the last episode was the first issue of Shadow Cabinet, and what we basically established is what the Milestone universe looks like now, 6 months after the Brainiac invasion, how the world has changed. Rocket is the only superhero left. Angela Alva is a new character on the scene. She is apparently related to the well-known billionaire of the Milestone universe named Edwin Alva, who has gone missing. And she's basically taking over everything that he had and doing it by force without asking permission.
Right.
And we find out who Rocket's secret ally is in this mission of hers, the ongoing mission that is never ending for her, which is Curtis Metcalf, who used to be the armored vigilante known as Hardware, and because he's a fugitive, is now living underground, and Rocket is with him. And Rocket meets a secret society of superheroes known as the Shadow Cabinet, and they try to recruit her, and she tells him to kiss off. And then finally, there's a new player in town, a mercenary named Sanction, and he's been hired to take out the superpowered gang known as the Blood Syndicate. And the Blood Syndicate has taken noble control of their neighborhood, which is a town in Dakota called Paris Island.
All right, so that brings us back up to speed. Let's bring up our first slide, Dr. Wizard. All right, so here we go with issue number 2. Here are the covers. Who did the cover on the cover A?
So all cover A's are done penciled by Dennis Cowan, and so for this cover, it's Dennis Cowan on pencils, Prentice Rollins on inks, Rollins, and Chris Sotomayor on colors.
I have one correction on that. I always refer to Dennis Cowan as the GOAT, Dennis Cowan.
That's fair. I mean, I tend to refer to him online as the first founder of Milestone, which he is.
There you go.
He was the first person to come up with the idea, and he began the recruitment of Michael Davis, Dwayne McDuffie, God rest his soul, and Derek T. Dingle.
All right. So he's doing. I didn't realize he was doing cover A for every issue. That's pretty dope.
100%.
That means cover A is a classic on every issue. That's outstanding.
That's a
so.
Fact.
Who we have Static is being introduced in this issue. Who did this cover on the right here?
That is the Nicholas Draper Ivy, the definitive Static artist of the 21st century. So he's doing all the B covers, and I mean, come on. I mean, that Static Shock speaks for itself. Like I want my T-shirt now.
The fact that you got him to do it. If you follow Nicholas Draper Ivy, y'all, he is going into other things right now with anime and manga and animation and what have you. So the fact that he was willing to come back and draw this cover says a lot. That how much love he has for the cover and his work on Static. So that's really kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, listen, no one else should do that cover.
Right.
It's like, again, he's the artist from Static Season 1, and which was written by Vita Ayala. And then he's the artist and co-writer of the sequel, Static Shadows of Dakota, which introduced Ebon from the Static Shock cartoon into the 21st century Milestone. and he took Ebon all the way. And so, having Dennis and Nicholas, that fusion of generations, really speaks to what Milestone is about. And it shows the commitment that's brought to this series, like how important Shadow Cabinet is.
All right. So we jump into this book. You mentioned before Sanction.
Yep.
Sanction is we finally get to see him in this issue. Tell us where his origins are, because this isn't the first time he has been introduced into the Milestone universe.
Right. And, one thing about, this iteration of Milestone, and also Shadow Cabinet in particular, is it's open for new readers, but it's also for the original generation Milestone readers and the new generation Milestone readers, right? So we create these new versions in ways that if they're new to you, it's an entirely new character. But if you know the source material, then it's a remix that you should appreciate. So Sanction is, like an ex-government dirty tricks guy, right? He's in his early 60s, and he's now a mercenary. So he's an operative for hire. And he's been hired to take out the Blood Syndicate, which is a superpowered gang of 8 or 9 people, right? And the original Sanction, which was created in the 90s by Dwayne McDuffie, and I think the first person to draw him was actually Dennis Cowan, but Hardware 25 was kind of like the big introduction of Sanction, and it had multiple artists. So this image that you're showing now was by Humberto Ramos. Now, Humberto Ramos is, of course, a very famous comic book artist now, well known for his work in Marvel, DC, but Humberto Ramos basically started at Milestone.
Exactly.
There's a lot of great creators that started at Milestone.
Right.
And Humberto's one of them. So this Sanction from the 90s, he had a very similar history. Ex-dirty tricks for the government, now a mercenary. And as a side note, the original Milestone publishing plan had a Sanction series. There's a Sanction Bible that I have a copy of.
Really?
There was a big plan for Sanction. Yes.
And you got people in the chat saying Black Nick Fury before Black Nick Fury.
100%. Because he was created in the 90s.
Right.
So
second panel looks like Danny Glover with an eye patch.
Bingo. That precedes Samuel Jackson, Nick Fury in the Ultimates comic book, right, which then, of course, precedes Samuel Jackson as Nick Fury in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Again, Milestone making first before everybody else.
Now, however, you may remember in our last episode, there was someone who pointed out that he wasn't actually the first Black male character with an eye patch. Someone mentioned a character from Master of Kung Fu.
Right.
So, so that was interesting. That was taking me way back. But you can see that this Sanction was modeled as a Black Nick Fury.
Yeah.
Right. So, but that's it. So, our guy now, he's a very methodical person. Like, for the people who have read this, on the very first page, what is that he's been planning this for a year. Because, come on, this guy's ex-government. So when the Big Bang happened, and the Big Bang was the police incident in which there was a Black Lives Matter protest in Dakota, and the police attacked the protesters with an experimental gas, and that gas did two things. It either killed protesters or the survivors ended up having superpowers. And that was the creation of superhumanity in the Milestone universe. Now, a guy like Sanction, he's smart enough to know that once something like a superhuman enters the world, that there are going to be federal agencies, there are going to be domestic and international world powers that are not going to be comfortable with how the balance of power can be upset by superhuman beings, especially superhuman beings with brown and yellow skin.
Right. Right.
And so he knew one day someone was going to call him and be like, dude, you got to deal with this. So
and it's interesting because this is shout out to Wraith X7. He says he was the one who mentioned Midnight Carter
yes,
from
he
the
was.
old.
Yes, he was.
So this truly is a Sanction 2.0, because
Yes.
as badass as Sanction was in the Hardware series, I think his first issue was Hardware 25, if I'm not mistaken.
His first big appearance was Hardware 25. His first appearance was a cameo in Hardware 19, in which he was called Mission. His original name was Mission, and for some reason it got changed to Sanction by the time he shows up in Hardware 25.
Right. But this guy, in his capabilities, seems far more deadly than he ever was in his original iteration. Like, when you say things like, we're hiring you to take out not Hardware, not Rocket, not Icon, we're hiring you to take out the entire Blood Syndicate at one time. And he's like, okay, it's double the fee, but yeah, sure.
Yep. And he was given 3 days to do it, and he's like, I'll do it in 24 hours. Because he's been planning it for a year. He's like, I don't need 3 days. Let's just
thanks
get it
for the shot. All right. So it was also interesting when you go back to the original Hardware comic. He also had interaction with Transit, another character that you brought back in the series. I mean, you were really digging through the crates when you were doing the series. You're going deep into Milestone lore.
Yeah.
Everyone knows the major characters. You're going into the more obscure characters that people, unless you read those issues, you have no idea where these characters are coming from. So that's kind of dope.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, that's, listen, that's part of the fun, right? The original Milestone had such a rich world of characters, and when you think about just like superhero comic books in general, there's so much more fun to be had with the B and the C characters and the characters on the periphery, right? Like, Daredevil's a very popular character now, but some decades back, Daredevil was going to get canceled. Like, that character had one foot in the grave. And then some guy named Frank Miller was given a whack at him. And history was changed forever.
Right.
Right? So, yeah.
Oh, all right. So, I mean, you mentioned before that Rocket is finally introduced to who we know of as the Shadow Cabinet to date.
Right.
Dharma, Iron Butterfly, and Anansi.
Yes.
But in this introduction, we have a huge, huge reveal. Dharma's talks about, oh, well, you think I could, just because you helped Icon become a superhero, he's the first superhero. No. In actuality, I'm the first superhero. And not only does he declare, you're like thinking, all right, well, he's an old guy, so maybe because he has superpowers, he's the first. But he goes even further. He's like, I've been around a long time. And then it's revealed that he had predecessors to the Shadow Cabinet. The present Shadow Cat's not the original one, obviously. We knew about the one from the original Milestone series. But before them, there were at least 2 other iterations that we know of, or that he's revealing to us, or you're revealing to us.
Yep.
How old is Dharma? Is he immortal? Does he have slowed down aging? And, let's start with that question.
Okay. So, the Shadow Cabinet is a secret society of heroes. They have not been working in the public. Most people don't know that they exist. Right. Dharma is 50 years old. He's of East Indian descent. East Asian descent, more accurately. But black don't crack. So, you know what I mean? So he's 50, but he looks like he could be 35, right? And when we're first introduced to him in the story and you see his flashback, you know, the first panel you see is the moment that his powers emerged and he was a teenager, right? So basically, it's kind of like a metaphor for puberty, right? The same way for those people who know the first Bryan Singer X-Men film, Rogue's power emerging when it did is a metaphor for puberty, right? So Dharma's powers first emerged when he was a teenager, and it drove him mad because his ability is time view. So he can see the past and multiple futures of people and of objects, right? So he was hit with a lot at once, and it would have driven him mad. And what he had to do was he had to become a recluse. He had to, through meditative practices, mental discipline, and self-isolation, he had to learn to control this, right?
Was his
And
power was it naturally occurring? Was it like a mutant, or was it like an accident or something?
it was, I would say the close equivalent would be the mutants of Marvel.
Okay.
Yeah, it emerged. There was no known agent, chemical or biological that caused it. It was the power emerged. So when he says he's the first superhuman, he means that, right? And so when he was able to start controlling the power and seeing multiple futures, he saw the multiple futures of humanity. And most of them ended terribly, right? And so he knew that he had to attempt to prevent that. And he couldn't do it alone. So he found other superhumans, right? Because if you're talking about, you know, genetic instances, if you're talking about Darwinism, he understood that if he emerged, there must be other emergences happening. And so he traveled to find those people and create the first iteration of the Shadow Cabinet when he was in his early 20s.
Like around what year would that be? Like in the 80s, 90s?
Well, that would be in the 90s. And let me tell you something about that. So the first issue of the original Milestone Shadow Cabinet came out in 1994, right? So
Right.
that is 30 years ago, right?
Right.
So if you look at the panel on top, that is an homage to the Shadow Cabinet one cover that John Byrne did. So basically, what I'm saying is, when the first issue of Shadow Cabinet came out, is in our time when he created the first Shadow Cabinet.
Okay.
Right? So that was the first iteration. The second iteration, which you see below,
Right.
that was probably around maybe 13 years ago. And for those people who recognize what the second panel is an homage to, that's an homage to a Jim Lee piece with the Justice League that helped commemorate DC the New 52.
The New 52, yeah.
Which happened in 2011.
Right.
Right? And you see Dharma's hair is growing. He's older, right? So that was iteration 2. And those are the 2 iterations that I'm telling you about. Right? So
Now,
he's been at this for a while. And the thing about it is, they have been preventing cataclysmic events, but they've been losing people to do that.
are either of these 2 teams the one that we saw in the original Blood Syndicate series in the original Milestone?
Cannot say.
Cannot say. All right.
Maybe.
Those are always Maybe. All right. Those are always the best answers.
Well,
Because,
and if you look, you may recognize a few of the silhouettes. Some of the silhouettes look a little bit familiar. So, but we're remixing them now.
Kofi's asking, is this the first appearance of him? I'm new to this side of the milestone.
Dharma first appeared, I think it was in the Milestone 30th anniversary special, and Jeffrey Thorne wrote that chapter. And I think that chapter was called Tortuga, and Sean Damian Hill did the artwork along with Anthony Fowler Jr. as inker. So that was the first appearance of Dharma, and it was the first appearance of Iron Butterfly in her armor as a member of the Shadow Cabinet. She first appeared in her civilian identity. I think it was Blood Syndicate season 1, issue 2. Right. And then there was a Shadow Cabinet cameo in the very last panel of Icon versus Hardware 5.
And that's for this iteration of Milestone, Kofi, because obviously Dharma existed in the original Shadow Cabinet from 1994.
Yep.
All right. So then Dharma says, look, I know your future. I know the future of this world. Your future is not that great. You know, the future of this world is not that great. Is this scene, is this him just telling her, or is this him actually putting images in her head and having her see exactly what the future, the possibilities of the future are?
Well, basically what we're doing is we're showing you Dharma's viewpoint. So he's actually seeing these multiple visions. When he's talking to people, he's seeing multiple visions of their future. So Rocket is not seeing this, but he is seeing all of this. And what you're seeing are, at the very least, 3 scenarios in which he dies. Right. And basically what he's saying to her is, you know, the reason I'm inviting you to join us is because if you don't join us, you're going to be dead very soon. And everything is going to go to hell.
And her response?
Huh?
Yeah. I'm out.
Yeah, listen. Well, listen, you know, so I wanted to think about this. So, what, you know, the superhero genre has a number of conventions.
Yeah.
One of them is someone gets an invitation to some big group and most people say yes. And I'm like, but she wouldn't though. And the reason she wouldn't is because, so, you know, Rocket is 17 years old, and, you know, the history of Rocket is young girl named Raquel Irvin. She and her boyfriend and a few other friends went to this wealthy neighborhood in Dakota because her friends and her boyfriend wanted to rob some rich person's house. She just wanted a typewriter because she's an aspiring writer, and she wanted like an old school typewriter. And so she kind of went with them because, you know, her boyfriend's part of it. And they invade the home of this wealthy Black lawyer named Augustus Freeman. But it turns out Augustus Freeman has superpowers. He's bulletproof, he has super strength, and he can fly because he is, in fact, an alien who has been on Earth for over 125 years. He landed during the time of slavery. And so for a number of reasons, he has decided to not engage humanity with his superpowers, just living the life of a wealthy lawyer. And when Raquel discovers him, she goes back and confronts him. And she's basically like, listen, I don't care what planet or galaxy you were born on or in, you are a Black man. And you have the power to change things. And you're sitting on your ass in your mansion doing nothing. And I don't accept that. And she compelled him to become a superhero named Icon. And she became his sidekick, Rocket, so that she could keep him on track. And what happened is, for a number of reasons, Icon left the Earth. He actually left the Earth to protect it from future invasions in the aftermath of the Brainiac invasion. And so she's here. But what happened ever since she's become Rocket is different people have different expectations of her. And she's tired of it. She's tired of everyone knowing what's best for her. And quite frankly, that kind of sounds like a 17-year-old, right?
Yeah.
A 17-year-old, they know what's best for them. Not their mom, not their dad, not their grandma, nobody, right? They know, or they think they know, right? And so she's like, okay, number one, you tell me that you can see my future. Should I believe that? Because that's kind of bonkers. Number two, I'm not just going with you, right? Like, I've got a thing to do. Like, I'm out here saving the world day by day, and I'm doing it in public. Your asses have been doing it in the shadows. And by the way, the world still sucks. So I don't know if you've been doing that good of a job, right? So she does not immediately accept his authority. And she has a mission to do. And she just wants to go back to it. And see, that's the thing. It's like you write these characters, and the characters, to some degree, are telling you what they would do. Right? Like me writing this, knowing Rocket, there's no way she was going to accept that invitation.
That's part of the brilliance and why I love the fact that you're the writer of this series, because these characters mean a lot to you. You're an original Milestone guy.
Yes.
You were in those offices. You know these characters. You know how they're supposed to sound, and you're giving that voice. You're not thinking, well, you know, this is how I'm going to rewrite this. You're like, no, I'm going to honor what happened before and expand upon it. You know, and that's a very fine line. And I know that can be a bit difficult for a writer sometimes, you know, because you kind of want to put your own spin on it. And you are, but you're always, for you, I see that you are honoring the source material tremendously. So for longtime Milestone readers like myself, it's a great experience to read this series, because there are these Easter eggs for old time Milestone fans. And then we have the added factor of seeing these characters now in a new world and new scenarios, new setups, and expanding the universe further, going further down the rabbit hole. So I'm really enjoying this a lot.
Thank you.
And then you've got, you know, before Rocket, you know, leaves, Anansi's like, hey, hope to see you again. Is he flirting with her?
Yeah, yes. And but not, you know, look, it's not that thing where, like, you know, I want to get horizontal with you. It's like you meet, it's when you meet a girl for the first time, right? And she just, or you meet, you know, whoever your partner is going to be for the first time. And it's just like, you like that person's energy, right? And you're like, I want to be around that person's energy again, right? And Rocket is basically like, I've got no interest in being a part of your team. Let me the hell out of here. And Anansi's basically like, I hope this isn't going to be the last time like we see one another. You know what I mean? And also, you know, and this is something that I really got from reading James Robinson's Starman series for DC. He did a story with the original Starman and Black Canary, who were a duo. And one of the things he established, and I thought it was just very insightful, is that, you know, when people who could be attracted to one another are in battle together, there's an adrenaline that comes from that. Alan Moore also did the same thing with Night Owl and Silk Spectre and Watchmen, right? And so Anansi and Rocket were fighting alongside one another in Shadow Cabinet 1. And it's like, you get a little bit of a charge out of that. So, it's an innocent flirtation, but it is a genuine admiration of who she is. And he doesn't want this to be the last time they see one another.
Yeah. Well, it seemed like foreshadowing. May the gods will us to have another. Like, I get the feeling like they're going to have some big adventure that you're alluding to in the future.
They could. I'd love that.
All right, you're not giving up anything. All right, that's fine. That's fine, Jim. That's fine.
We got a few more issues.
All right, so fast forward. We're catching up to Angela Alves, who has recruited Transit onto her side. You've got Tiffany Evans with her now, who offer her the deal she couldn't refuse.
Yep.
So she's building her coalition. I see here Transit use her powers. She's basically a living boom tube, but she's using her powers in an offensive fashion, which I don't recall in the original Milestone series. Is this something that you added? Is this your own spin on it?
Yeah, so, just to expand on this, so Angela Alva in this scene, she's basically now taking over Alva Industries, right? Which is the big multinational global technological giant, right? Basically, really think of the combination of some of the most influential companies in our world, right? Which would be Microsoft, which would be Elon Musk's Starlink, right? Which would be Larry Ellison's Oracle or Apple, right? Put a number of tech giants together and you would get Alva Industries. So Angela just goes to the office and she's like, okay, I'm the boss now, right?
Yeah.
Just so we're clear. She's like, my name is Angela Alva. Anyone who doubts my bona fides, you can get a one-way trip to the Arctic Circle.
She redefines hostile takeover.
Yeah, because here's the thing, like, Angela's a woman of years and experience, and she is smart enough to know that asking permission invites dissension. She's not asking permission of anybody. She's telling you what is happening in real time, and you either go with it or you go to the Arctic Circle. So Transit is her basically bodyguard and transporter, right? And so Transit is very adept at her abilities. And teleportation can be a passive ability or it can be an active ability, right? Because if you want to get a little pseudoscientific for a minute, so when you're talking about things like black holes and white holes, right? A black hole has a certain degree of gravity, right? And you go into a black hole and you come out of a white hole. So there's a certain amount of gravity in a black hole and there's a certain amount of repulsion in a white hole, right? So think of her teleportation as the wall between a black hole and a white hole. It has a certain amount of gravity and she controls that.
That's a dope take on it. That's dope. This is what I was just saying in terms of taking the original material and expanding upon it but still honoring the original material. I love that. Now, this is kind of a weird question.
Okay.
Just my take.
Okay.
She is the sister to Edwin Alva.
Yes, she is.
But coloring wise, she seems to be a couple shades darker than pasty old white dude Edwin Alva.
Yes.
Is there a reason for that?
There is a reason for that. That reason will be revealed in detail in Shadow Cabinet 3. Shadow Cabinet 3 is going to be the origin of the Alvas.
Okay.
And you're going to find out exactly what the last 100 years of Alva history has been and how that led into Hardware Season 1 and how that leads into now. But that's going to be a very important read. And a lot of things will become clear. And Angela as a character and her motivations will become crystal clear.
All right. Somebody's got a little extra melanin from somewhere. Well, guess we'll find out from where.
Seems so. Just a little bit.
I love the dramatic entrance of Static.
All right. I'll be back in 1 second, and then we're going to talk about that.
All right. Let's see what's going on in the chat with you guys. Yo, I just realized Alva looks just like Skip Bayless. We need a character based on Shannon Sharp.
Oh, that's funny. I wouldn't mind doing a character on Shay Shay. I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Interesting. Is the body that enters the black hole immediately exit the white hole, or is there some intermediate ley line between the black and white holes? Unfortunately, we don't know the answer to that because anything you send to the black hole is squeezed to microscopic levels. All right. So, before you introduce these characters, you don't just throw them on the page. You do this symbol, and we're still gonna come up again. You threw this symbol out there. It's like, guess who's coming? Static. It's like you're building the anticipation. So that was a real. Did you do this on purpose for that?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just giving you my take.
Yes, this is on purpose. So I'll tell you what this. You know what? Let's get to the next scene, and then I will tell you exactly what that means.
All right. So here's our man Static. Still wearing his X hat from 1993.
Yep.
Which, as a complete aside, completely tangential, Elon Musk has now released a hat that looks very. Are you aware of this?
No, tell me about this.
So he renamed Twitter X.
Yes.
Right? It's now X.
Yeah.
So now there's X merchandise. And one of the X merchandise that popped up in my feed recently when I was logged into Twitter was an X hat. So it's a black hat with an X on it.
Really? Wait a minute. Are you telling me that
Are you
telling me that black culture is being co-opted for financial gain outside of black culture and institutions?
Imagine that.
Paul, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I mean, who would ever do that?
There are supervillains in the world, and some of them can be made president. Anyway, so moving on.
We'll get to narcissism in Shadow Cabinet 3. We'll have a
conversation
about what narcissism really is.
We're back to Static. This is not our happy-go-lucky Virgil Hawkins that we know and love that we saw in the original Milestone era. He has been through some stuff, some things.
Yeah.
He's darker. He's more cynical. He's more serious. Tell us what's going on with him right now.
So basically, when the Brainiac invasion happened, something else that happened during that time is that Curtis Metcalf, as the Armored Avenger Hardware, he discovered a time machine, and he actually tried to eliminate slavery. He went back in time so that slavery never happened and that the Big Bang never happened. He really tried to change the future of humanity, and it was a disaster, right? And one of the consequences of that was time fissures opened up and different things from the past, different past, dropped into our present. In some cases, it was like dinosaurs, but in one case, it was Nazis from Nazi Germany.
Literal Nazis.
Literal Nazi battalions, right? And that included Adolf Hitler. And they ended up in Static's neighborhood. They ended up near his family's house. They were marching on the block, and Static arrived. He and his family were having a barbecue, and he beats them with his lightning powers, and then he just laughs it off, right? And that was the latest in a series of events over a 6-month period in which a villain named Hot Streak burned his family's house down. Another villain named Ebon beat him up and almost killed him, right? Brainiac, an alien artificial. And then Nazis show up on your block. Now, one of the things that we really wanted to do with Shadow Cabinet is, when I thought about this and how important this story was going to be as a culmination of the last 4 years of Milestone stories, going back to the beginning of the relaunch in 2020 with Milestone. A new reader, you could read the Shadow Cabinet, and it's a story about the fall and rise of heroism. Powers. I really wanted to think about it, not how you would see superheroes usually portrayed, but in a more naturalistic way. So I want you to think about this. This young man, in 6 months, one superhuman burns down his family's house. Another superhuman almost kills him. An alien artificial intelligence comes to take over. Are on his block. They could have killed his family. I want you to think about how that would feel for you. Like, you're hearing some chanting going on and you're hearing marching, and you look outside your window and it's Nazis. A whole battalion of them with their bayonets and guns and the whole 9 yards, right? Now, basically what I'm putting forth is, in Icon vs. Hardware 5, he's joking around and saying, oh, I was having a barbecue with my family and I just saw you guys, so I just dealt with you. That was a lie. That was a lie, because if you're Static, you don't allow Nazis to get to your family's block. You just don't allow that, right? So basically, Static is a kid who jokes around a lot. So what I'm basically putting forth is, he was lying to be funny. He just got there.
Yeah.
He just got there just in time, right? And basically, all of these things, the cumulative effect of it hit him. And he realized that he could have lost his mother and his father and his sister. And in my mind, the day when he dealt with the Nazis, that night, he cried in his room. Because it all just flattened him. And I think he decided, he's like, you know what? Yeah, I'm not gonna let anything happen to my family. The world is the world, and that's cool, but I'm gonna protect my block and my house. And so what you saw before, that Rocket saw, that was basically like how you see crop circles, but it was also a signal, right? It was a message, so that if you're an alien and you're looking from the sky level, or you're some flying bang baby, or you're someone in a helicopter, you see that insignia burned into the ground, and you know this is the neighborhood of Static. You cross this line, you cross it at your peril.
Don't start one, won't be none.
Yeah. So he basically tagged his neighborhood.
Right.
Understand the consequences of crossing that marker.
So he's decided, I'm no longer going to focus on saving Dakota or the world. I need to focus on protecting my block. Why? Because that's where my family lives. And I almost 100%. Lost my family on multiple occasions.
100%. And I'll take it a little further for you. So in this scene, he asks Rocket, what would you do if your mom was gone? Right?
Yeah.
That's a nod to the Static Shock animated series, in which his mom was dead. And basically, what we're saying is this Virgil could not endure that. Because when we talk about Black families in comic books, they're rarely intact. They're usually broken. Miles Morales, broken family. Right? It's very hard to find a Black character with an intact nuclear family.
Right. Right.
So Static's family, which is the Hawkins family, which goes back to the Static comics of the 90s, has been historically in publishing intact. So this kid's got a nuclear family. He couldn't handle, or he wouldn't handle, the death of any of them, but especially his mother. And that is kind of like a parallel universe echo of the Static Shock cartoon, in which he lost his mother.
Right. It's the big difference between the two. Yeah. So I even there's even that I mentioned before, that line, "Don't start none, won't be none," and you kind of do an allusion to it here. You know,
Yes.
The bang baby with the problem better not start anything, or else there'll be something. Nice
Right.
little homage to that statement.
Yeah.
But you mentioned tagging, right?
Yes.
He's tagging his neighborhood to let you know this is Static's neighborhood is under protection.
Yeah.
We see here tagging again from the Blood Syndicate in Paris Island.
Yes.
You know,
This wall was introduced in Blood Syndicate season 1, number 1, written by Jeffrey Thorne and illustrated by Chris Cross, Juan Castro, and Will Quintana. So, Icon emerging in the world inspired, some artists to create this mural in Paris Island. But, it's 6 months later, and the Blood Syndicate is entirely focused on Paris Island. So they're basically letting everyone know, like, this whole city is our territory. And it was very important for them to tag this picture of Icon to basically let the people know that's not your hero. We're your heroes.
Yeah.
Because Icon is nowhere to be found.
Right.
Right?
We're your
So basically, there's no worshiping of false gods in our hood.
Got you. So bam, boom, we go right into the action. You didn't even waste any time with the introduction of Blood Syndicate. It was immediate action. We see flashback. You see Aqua Maria. You see Brick. By the way, this rendering of Brick is the best, most beautiful version I've seen to date. And given the amount of talented artists who have tackled this character over the years, that's saying a lot. Shout out to Daryl Banks. His artwork is just fire in this series, man. It's just I really enjoy the fact. I think people, for one, I think he is tremendously underrated or unacknowledged, I should say, in the comic book community. Because if you look at the detail in his artwork, it's huge. Look at the detail on this brick. Right down to the actual lines and the bricks itself. It's just, you can study this and see this guy knows what he's doing. So, shout out to Daryl Banks, man.
Yeah, I mean, Daryl has been, listen, he's one of the best storytellers in comics. He is, he's a legend. This is the guy that co-created the Kyle Rayner Green Lantern, co-created Parallax. And, what you're talking about, things like texture, it's really interesting. As much as there's a lot of amazing art in comics these days, I do feel like things have changed. I think for some things, there's a slower evolution of artists.
Mhm.
I think part of that is, an absence of guidance in the industry, right? But Daryl, like, he knows all the principles, and he brings his storytelling skills and his rendition skills, in every page. And so, like you said, like that character, her name is Brickhouse because, her body is made of bricks, and that looks like brick. It doesn't look like any other substance. That's putting in the work.
It
So,
is
like
put
you
in.
said, shout out to Daryl Banks. And, part of the tragedy of our industry is that there are a lot of talented artists who have made impact that are, like underrated or under acknowledged or under profiled.
Yeah.
And I feel like, we will acknowledge them. We will profile them. And so to me, Shadow Cabinet, is part of the resume of Daryl Banks, showing you what he's made of, right? And the thing is, quality doesn't have to scream, look at me. Quality is evident.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And that's why Black Comic Lords exist. So you introduced two more characters from the Blood Syndicate that we have not seen a lot of in this latest iteration in this new season. Boogeyman and Masquerade. Tell us about these characters.
So, this is a superpowered gang called the Blood Syndicate. All of them got their powers at the Big Bang. They were exposed to the gas during the protests. And, going back to the original Milestone co-founder, Dwayne McDuffie, who was the editor-in-chief, main writer of Milestone, but also literally a genius, and a brilliant scientific mind. And the way he thought about the Big Bang and how people got their powers is that when you were exposed to the gas, you were basically subjected to the uncertainty principle of quantum physics. And at the subatomic level, perception is reality. And so the people that died, they thought that they were going to die, and that the people who lived, their self-perception determined how they were mutated. So Boogeyman, for some reason, mutated as like a humanoid rat. I think he used to hang out in the sewers and considered the rats his friends. Masquerade is a person who has issues of self-identity, and so has the ability to transform into different types of animals.
Or people, for that matter. Apparently.
Or people. That's right. That's right. Can totally look like someone from another gender, someone from another ethnic background or complexion. Absolutely.
Now, what's interesting, again, you take the original material and you put a little progression and spin on it. In Masquerade's case, you do this thing where, this wasn't in the original iteration of Masquerade. You never saw Masquerade do multiple animals at the same time, and you've done that here because you've got the pterodactyl type creature. Then you've also got, I don't know what this is.
Like an ape.
Yeah.
Like yeah.
Mixing and matching various animals together to make new power sets. Is this original thing that you came up with?
Yeah, again, I was really thinking about it, and I was saying, okay, you can transform yourself into different life forms. Why would you limit it to just one, right? Like, the saying, I can chew gum, I can walk and chew gum at the same time, right? And it's like, why can't you have a fusion of 2 or 3 different animal qualities? Because you're not literally that animal, you're a metamorph, right? You can transform your mass to emulate the physical and genetic properties of these things. So to me, Masquerade would adjust to a situation.
So we talked about Sanction, and he's going after the Blood Syndicate. This version of Sanction, he's got a bit of an upgrade.
Yep.
Can
Yeah.
you tell us about this suit that he's wearing?
Yeah. So, Sanction was first introduced in the last page of Shadow Cabinet 1, right? And you see him, and he's somewhere in the world, and he's just finished killing a bunch of normal humans, right? But when you're going after a group of superhumans, you've got to armor up, right? So this bodysuit of his is basically bleeding edge technology. And it's funny, the suit was designed by Darryl Banks and Dennis Cowan. When I was writing the script, I kind of said, okay, I imagine these elements, right? Just from thinking from a practical standpoint of paramilitary operations, intelligent materials, armors, plastics, things like that. And then Darryl came up with this idea, and then Dennis took the idea to the next level, right? And we were like, okay, this is what it is, right? And yeah, you do have to upgrade because you're going to war with people with powers that they can destroy cities, literally destroy cities, right? And for the people who read Blood Syndicate season 1, the Blood Syndicate took control of Paris Island on the news, on the evening news. They wanted cameras to see them, to communicate to people, this is our neighborhood. So Sanction was well aware from the very beginning of who he was dealing with, and he spent this year doing research, right? And when you look at his outfit, there's even a psychological warfare aspect to it because he's kind of got that monstrous mouth on his mask, right? Which you see that. Now imagine you seeing that in the dark, right? Like it's supposed to freak you out. Like Sanction understands that psychological warfare can be more impactful than physical warfare. If I can scare you as soon as you see me, then 3/4 of the job is done. Right? So that's kind of what's going on here. He's like, he wants them to see him and know they're done.
So he takes them on.
Yep.
We see the rest of the Blood Syndicate, Wise Son, my man Tech 9, Third Rail, Fade. They apparently have him surrounded. They're like, yeah, we got this to fool. You need to stand down.
Yep.
But he bodies them. The whole squad.
Yep. I'm like, listen.
How powerful is this guy?
He's one of the most dangerous men on earth. And the thing is,
what's his power set?
His power set is intelligence and experience. Like his outfit, that's technology. That's technology that he purchased. Guns, gauntlet blade, body armor, night vision goggles. That's all basically like just a little further than the military technology that exists right now. The only thing that, and this is still technology, so within this story, he takes out Fade, right? And Fade is this person that seems like a ghost and is intangible. But the fact of the matter is, Fade is somehow connected to physics, which means there's frequencies of matter, there's phases, and somehow Fade still is on this world because he's not sinking into the ground, right? So Sanction is like, okay, so I just have to disrupt his frequency. And that's what he does, right? So all of these people were created by science and they can be taken out by science, And again, this is an ex-Dirty Tricks guy. This guy has been infiltrating banana republics and killing dictators before any of these people were born. He's in his 60s.
Right, right.
So his superpower is intelligence and experience.
Damon Watson asked, seeing him put me in the mind of Taskmaster, was that intentional?
It's interesting. The Hood was a Dennis Cowan edition, and I think it just made him more mysterious. I really didn't think of him, from a Taskmaster perspective, and I say that as someone who I remember being a kid and buying Avengers 195, the first appearance of Taskmaster. Taskmaster is kind of like, he is someone who he sees what you can do and he has the innate ability to emulate it. Sanction doesn't have that luxury. Like, Sanction had to get his skills the hard way, like everybody else. So from my perspective, he's superior to Taskmaster. Not to throw any shade, but I'm just saying, like, Sanction got all his skills the hard way over decades.
So in going after the Blood Syndicate, he actually has help. We have, what I love about the Shadow Cabinet in general. You want to say, oh, they're a group of superheroes. Well, are they? I mean, there's so the Shadow Cabinet is about the gray. It's not black. It's not white. It's completely everything's in the gray. You can't tell who the players are in the Shadow Cabinet book. You can't tell who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. Sometimes it's a matter of perspective. Allegiances are, as they would say, fluid. Because you've got him also getting help from Transit. Transit jumps in at the same time he's attacking Blood Syndicate. Transit makes a move on Curtis Metcalf. So who's she working for? Because we don't know. We know she's Dharma, but why?
Okay, so it's interesting. So do we want to talk about Transit first? Okay, so let's talk about Transit. So Transit goes after Curtis Metcalf at the same time that Sanction is going after the Blood Syndicate. Now, we don't know who hired Sanction yet.
Yeah.
We'll find out in Shadow Cabinet 3, right?
Okay.
But we know that Transit works for Angela Alva.
Right.
So this happening right here, that's an Angela Alva operation. Right? And remember, Curtis Metcalf, his mortal enemy is Angela's brother.
Right.
Edwin Alva. And that's her family, which makes Curtis Metcalf her enemy by default. Yeah?
Yeah.
So this is a little personal here, right? And the thing about Transit is she can get in and out of any place. Like, you're hiding, when she finds you, when she knows where you are, she'll get to you. And that's what she does.
But then we're talking about the situation with Iron Butterfly.
Right.
Now, again, the gray. Iron Butterfly and Wise Son have a history dating back to the war in, is it Iraq or Afghanistan?
Yeah, it's never officially said. We know that it's the Middle East, but I don't think Jeffrey Thorne says geographically exactly where it is. But we know it's the Middle East.
Somewhere in the Middle East. They run across each other. She ends up sparing his life. She has the advantage. For some reason, she spares his life.
Yeah.
Arguably, a debt is owed.
Yes.
Are we going to get further information on this exchange between them? What this debt is? What happened to them back in the war? How is this going to affect their future? We're going to get more expansion on that.
Well, what I will say is this, as you pointed out, basically, Y-Sun was part of a military operation that laid waste to the town in which Iron Butterfly lived.
Okay.
And it's unknown whether it was during this trauma or before that, but she has, I guess they would be called ferrokinetic abilities. So she is able to mentally manipulate metal like Magneto, right? And she pointed a bunch of guns at him, and she really wanted to kill him, but she lets him live. She shows him mercy, right? Now, here what happened is, if you remember, Y-Sun was in that battle with Sanction. He was supposed to get caught, but Iron Butterfly pulled him out because, as you said, Y-Sun has a debt to repay, and she knows how he's going to pay it. He doesn't know how he's going to pay it, but she works for the guy that can see multiple futures of everybody. And so it will be paid. And how it will be paid will be revealed in Shadow Cabinet 4.
Do we know if when they had met originally during the war, if Iron Butterfly had already been in the employ of Dharma at that time?
No.
Okay.
She becomes in the employ of Dharma in the Milestone 30th anniversary special, and that came after Blood Syndicate season 1.
Okay. All right. Now, again, allegiances are very fluid in this series.
Right.
Because Transit grabs Curtis Metcalf, but then she's talking to Dharma.
Yes.
How many people is she working with? Are we going to get more information on what's going on here?
Okay. You're not going to get any more information on the connection between Transit and Dharma. So I'll tell you a few things.
Okay.
So remember, Dharma was the first superhuman, and he's gathered superhumans from time to time. And Dharma has a machine that's a teleportation machine called Shadow, right? It's within Shadow Spire. But it's entirely possible that once upon a time, he had a human teleporter. It's entirely possible that once upon a time, a young human teleporter meets this older, attractive, wise man who can see multiple futures, and emotional things happen. And it's entirely possible that such a stoic individual would break that person's heart, and that person would leave. That could have happened, right? Now, what else is happening, right? So Dharma can see multiple futures, and he's trying to ensure the one future. And he offered Rocket a chance to join the Shadow Cabinet, and she said no. Once she said no, she activated a number of possible tangents. And so what he's got to do is he's got to manipulate events to ensure the one future in which everyone survives. And if that means he's got to accelerate things, he does it. And that's what he did. He gave up Curtis Metcalf, and we'll see why later, but he's in a race against time to ensure the one future.
Which is the future
in which people survive.
Yeah, but it's a numbers game, right? Like
100%.
He's just trying to figure out which future allows the most amount of people to live.
Bingo, right? And, Transit's perspective is like, okay, you owed me an emotional debt. It's now paid. Don't ever contact me again. Like, we're now slate wiped clean for how you hurt me. Right? So If I ever
Ray
get to write Shadow Cabinet 0 or Shadow Cabinet 2011 or something like that, we could get into a few more things. But these two have a history, and that history is now closed.
I agree with Wraith X. The series would make an awesome animated movie. So then we end the book. Curtis is now captured by Transit on behalf of Dharma, or is it on behalf of Ms. Alva, Angela?
On behalf of Angela.
It's on behalf of Angela.
Yeah. Angela and Curtis have to have a talk. And everything's got to come out. Like, who she is, why she's here, what her beef with him is, and what happens next. Because he's been a fugitive for about a year because he was framed for the Big Bang event. He worked at Alva Industries, and Edwin Alva framed Curtis and said, due to his irresponsibility in the handling of the gas, that's what led to the accident that killed a number of people and mutated a number of other people.
Right.
So Angela's put an end to that now. Now his running game is over. She's got him, and they got to have a talk. So next issue is the talk that answers a lot of questions. A lot of questions.
Well, speaking of the next issue, here's our covers.
Yeah.
Is that Angela on the left there with Curtis?
100%.
And Curtis on the right here on a motorcycle?
Yep. Yeah,
With
Nicholas Draper Ivy said he wanted to depict Hardware in a way that we've never seen him, but that would look pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, mission accomplished on that.
So he did that. And if you really look at the artwork, the graffiti is saying some things.
Yes. Yes. He managed to sneak in Cowan and McDuffie on there. And then it's got a number, is it 931? 93. 93. The year that the Milestone universe was created. So that's what's up.
Yeah.
Shout out to him for that. He's got actually some more names on the jacket. There's the Milestone symbol, the M on his chest.
Yeah.
At
this size, I can't see the other names, but yeah, he's dropping a number of clues in this, and it's even cool if you look at Curtis's motorcycle helmet. There's Hardware design elements to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm trying to see those other signatures. Yeah, he clearly has other signatures on there. I'm trying to determine whose signatures are on there. That's kind of dope. It's a nice touch.
Yeah.
Speaking of homages, going back to this cover on the left, I know I'd seen that image before. I just couldn't place where it was. And then as I was researching Sanction, it suddenly occurred to me.
Yep.
This is right out of Hardware 25.
Yeah. Yeah. We were having some fun when Marquise Draper, the editor at DC Comics, and I were talking about, hey, what should we do for the cover of issue 3? I was like, you know what would be cool? And I just threw at him, and he was like, yep, let's go. And then since Dennis drew the original Hardware 25, and he's doing the covers, it's like, come on, we got to do this.
It was funny. We had interviewed Dennis several weeks ago, and we talked about the fact that one of the things that shows that you're a GOAT is when you get to do homages of your own work.
That's right.
And this is exactly what you had him do yet again.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. So that is Hardware. Shadow Cabinet number 2. Shadow Cabinet number 3 drops on January 15th, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds about right. Yeah, yeah.
So we'll be back on January 19th, the following Sunday, for the next episode
All
of
right.
Shadow Factor. Is it Shadow Factor? Is it Shadow
Shadow
Factor?
Faction.
Shadow Faction. Shadow Faction.
Yeah, because all
Uh,
your series got names. Like the Storm series has a name, and I was like, yeah, we gotta have a name.
Shadow Faction. All right. So next episode of Shadow Faction, January 19th. I need you guys to do a few things for me. Number one, hit the like button on this video. Number two, share this video. Number three, keep doing your comments. If you have any questions, throw it in there. Share the video out there. But most importantly, you need to pre-order these comics. Issue 3, issue 4. Is the FOC for issue 3 gone already?
The FOC for issue 3 is gone because one of the things about the direct market is, and you finally figure this out, but it's so wild. The FOC for the following issue is the Monday before the Wednesday that issue comes out, right? So this is one of the reasons why it's very important to pre-order an entire series or mini series with your comic shop, because that way, as opposed to doing it issue by issue, you just say, hey, pre-order the entire series for me. That's what I have done with Black Lightning, the Power Fantasy. I just did that with New Gods. It's like Absolute Batman. It's like, I'm confident in a creative team, pre-order the whole series for me. And that way, that demand, that communication to your retailer and the publisher is consistent. At this point, if you've not been pre-ordering Shadow Cabinet, and come on, you can still pre-order issue 4, which is the final issue of the series, which will be coming out in February. 3, you can no longer pre-order, but you can, of course, go to your comic book shop and get it in January. And issues 1 and 2 are in some comic book shops now. Some comic book stores have already sold out of 1, which is kind of like good and bad. It's good that it's selling out. It's bad because you want copies to be available for everyone who wants it. And so it's all part of, this whole relationship with creators and publishers and you, the readers and the buyers and the retailers. And how do you let the important parties know that there's a demand for this story and for more stories from this universe, right? And pre-ordering is the best way to do it. And thank you to all y'all lords for really helping to bring this home to people, because I don't feel like it's an option anymore. I feel like this is how we tell the industry what we want. We have to advance order it. Discovery is not enough anymore. That's where we are now. Right? We're dealing with capitalism. We're not dealing with nostalgia. We're not dealing with affection or empathy. Right? We are dealing with numbers communicating demand.
Look, let me tell you, the push for my New Year's resolution in 2025 is that we here at Black Comic Lords take it up a notch when it comes to pushing the importance of pre-orders. I think what we're talking about at this point is doing a show every week that specifically focuses just on pre-orders to try and give that added push for that. Speaking of added pushes, we still can pre-order issue 4. Yes. Those numbers will allow the publisher to decide, maybe we should go ahead and do another limited run on Shadow Cabinet. Bring Joe back to do another series. This is our opportunity to make it happen. I hear complaints all the time. You guys see complaints all the time. Why don't we see more of this? Why don't we see more of that? Where's Milestone? We've been talking about this for the past year. We see those comments out there. Here's your opportunity to make it happen. Pre-order issue 4. Get every cover, get multiple copies, give it out to a friend, give it to a kid, get them involved. This is the opportunity to do it. And best part about pre-ordering, if you find the right LCS to do it, you're going to get a discount. It's actually cheaper to pre-order a comic than to walk into the store and buy it.
In a number of cases. And listen, hey, we're a few days from Christmas. Comics make great stocking stuffers.
They absolutely
still get Shadow Cabinet 1 and Shadow Cabinet 2 right now. I was very honored. YRB magazine actually put Shadow Cabinet 2 on their holiday gift guide for 2024. If you follow me on the socials, you'll see the link to that. And first of all, just that kind of acknowledgement from a mainstream outlet, was pretty heartwarming for myself and the entire team Shadow Cabinet. But also, comic books are great gifts any time of the year. And so giving them out for Christmas, it's like, or Kwanzaa, that's a no-brainer, right? So yeah.
There's a question here for you, Joe. I hear Mr. Illidge is the first Black man to join Batman editorial group at DC Comics. Is that true? Don't mind hearing about it towards the end of the stream.
Yes. Okay. So first of all, very, very kind of Kofi to mention that. And I think there is something to ending on that. So Milestone was where I started my career in 1993. I actually started as an intern, and I wanted to be a writer. I went to Milestone. I was like, I want to be a writer. I'm interning at this company because I want to write comics. And then Dwayne McDuffie, man, like, the editor-in-chief, this guy, I never heard anybody talk about story like this guy. And when I saw what he did, when I saw what editing was, something that I didn't care about, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I was like, that's where I want to be. I want to be helping creators be the best versions of themselves. I want to help shape the mythologies for decades to come. And so I started my editorial career at Milestone, and then my next stop was the DC Comics Batman editorial group in 1998, where I was the first editor of color in the Batman editorial group. And during this time, we did a lot of amazing books, some of which I'm the most proud of are Batman the Hill by Christopher Priest and Sean Martinborough.
Yeah.
The year 2000 relaunch of Batman Detective Comics by Greg Rucka and Sean Martinborough. The introduction of Cassandra Cain in No Man's Land. No Man's Land, the year-long crossover, which still hasn't been beaten. Like, let's just be straight. There's no Batman crossover that has beaten No Man's Land yet.
And they've actually used that as stories on the screen now, too.
100%. No Man's Land was referenced by name and by elements in The Penguin.
Yeah.
Referenced, right? So these stories that I had the honor of working on are having impact in media. They've helped galvanize careers. They're still part of the mythology. Cassandra Cain is a very beloved character. She has her own series again. So, yeah, but Milestone trained me for that. When I walked into DC Comics, I was the student of one of the best editors that North American comics ever saw and ever will see, and that's Dwayne McDuffie. One of the best writers that North American comics ever saw and ever will see. God rest his soul. And writing Shadow Cabinet is me paying back the company that, gave me purpose and allowed me to be here. This is a full circle. I feel like this will be our kingdom come. This will be our grand tale of heroism of color, that it will stand the test of time. And, that's me giving back to the legacy that allowed me to contribute. So
As often
it all
said,
fits.
Milestone made me.
100%.
All right. Shout out to Jeffrey Thorne in the building.
Oh,
Talking about you, Jeff. Your ears must have been burning.
yeah. We did mention him a couple of times.
All right. Sean Fry has a question here. Will Shadow Cabinet introduce any other new heroes besides Anansi?
That is a good question. And to be fair, Anansi had one other appearance in Static Team Up 1 Anansi. You know, it's so I don't want to answer that question because I don't want to spoil anything. What I will say is this, that it's going to move characters forward. There's no doubt about that. You're going to see the expansion of characters beyond as you know them. And when we get to the final issue, what the philosophy of a shadow cabinet is will be made very clear. And this story is meant to open new doors to a very clear future of the Milestone universe.
So on that note, again, let me reemphasize. Final push. Go ahead, contact your LCS in the morning and pre-order Shadow Cabinet number 4. Please, I implore each and every one of you. If you like this video, if you like what Joe has been putting out here and what he has revealed to you, this intrigues you, if you want to support Milestone, go pre-order issue number 4. So with that, we'll see you all again on January 19th for the next episode of
The Shadow Faction.
Shadow Factions. Doesn't get any better than that.
Really
all right, Dr. Wizard, take us out. Black Comic Lords, we got you.